Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week on the Cyclekart I'm back on the scuttle trying to get the steering wheel surround sorted. See you in a minute. Right, so the scuttle is now pretty much there. It's trimmed up back to the timber lines. I've left enough room to be able to stick some dye bond there if I want to on that vertical face, so that it will be flush with the outer body if that ever happens. Still not sure yet with that. That's the bonnet side with the engine sitting in the front there. I've now got to address the cowl over the steering wheel, and to do that I've just spent a bit of time at Mending Sheds making up a couple of formers, which are essentially that scuttle shape less roughly the thickness of the dye bond, and what I can do is I'll make that into a little shape like that, glue that up, and what that will do is when I take it back off, it'll give me something I can just bend the dye bond over to get that shape right. That will come to about there on this bracket, and hopefully come into the scuttle itself in the right place. I've got a windscreen to go on the top here, so that will need to be remodelled, and I'll probably do that in glass fibre and dye bond, but we will see. Let's glue this up first anyway. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since I did anything on the Cyclekart, and I don't feel too guilty about that because everything else had got well behind in the shed, jobs I was doing because of earlier work I was doing on it, so it's time for a bit of a catch up and a reset on that, I think. I just want to try and get this scuttle panel made out of dye bond as a starting point, and then I can hopefully, once I've got a template made, move on and get the whole thing down. I'm going to reassemble it down on the ground somewhere and see if I can't nail the cockpit size down. So I've got some of the tracing paper that I use for projects, just to see if I can't get a template made, and then I can transfer that to the dye bond. It's more a matter of getting the size than anything. It needs an overlap because it goes over the metal brackets where it'll bolt to, so if I work it to about there, and I'm pretty certain it's straight lines everywhere, but I just want to get a rough idea. Size. I don't know yet what I'm going to do by way of holding or locating this stuff, whether I use a similar sort of framework underneath it or whether it will have enough strength in itself to hold together. That more or less remains to be seen. But we'll just get this cut out first, get the shape right, and then we'll see how rigid it is and whether it needs a framework underneath it. Okay, that's good enough to get me a starter. So let's go and find some dye bond. Now all we need to do is just wrap it around the former. I think I'll mark a midpoint so we can make sure we get the right overhang at each end. To just help things along. We'll take the covering off it as well. There's a couple of bits of damage in it because it's been used. There's a couple of pimples, but I'm not at all worried about that. On the top of this where the screen is, the whole thing changes shape, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it, but there'll be a scoop up of something glass fibre dye bond, I don't know what, in front of the screen anyway. So anything that's an imperfection I can sort of flatten out and then we'll be filling later on. It's fine. I always thought this was going to be the difficult bit because there's a lot of complex shapes on the car, but in fact, because you've got that 19-degree slope on the front of the scuttle, it means that this whole thing is essentially just a straightforward segment of a circle. So it's very very easy to sort out. 670, that's 335, isn't it? Or 13¼ inches in old money. Just gives me a guide to work. When I was using the 3mm as a trial for the various bits on the cart, I decided it didn't bend as well as the 2. Hasn't quite got the same ability to bend, so I'm sticking with 2mm. It's plenty thick enough. Just go for that one and make a smaller bend on it, and then I can bring it back. Again, easier than I thought it would be. I have to get that up in the air a bit because of the overhang. Yeah. that I think is going to work well. And I don't think it'll need a lot of fixing. It seems to be pretty rigid. I think if I anchor this at along that bottom edge to the side rails that come out from the scuttle, and I anchor it at the scuttle itself with brackets there, I think this other edge won't need anything else. I think there'll be enough strength in that whole thing, which is good, because it all helps with room inside getting in and out of the cockpit. But I think we're ready to trial fit that. I think I'm happy with that. There's going to be a bit of finessing to do because that bulge is slightly greater radius, I think. Just sticks out a bit there, but that's really fettling. But I'm pleased with the shape. It's all coming together quite nicely. And as I say, it supports itself, so it can just be bolted along there as in the prototype, and probably a series of L brackets, or I may even cut down a piece of the aluminium strip I've got. I finally got round to deciding what I want to do with this fixing for the shroud, and I think the idea is to be that I'm just going to get a one piece like that of plywood that's exactly to that contour that I've got now, and then I'll just take it back 2mm from that, and that'll give me something to fix to with small bolts, rivets, whatever, and I can use that as a plate to hold the two prongs that go forward and hold the windscreen up as well. And I think that will work better than the current sort of ideas of just bolting it there and having a strip around there. I think I'm going with a solid piece of plywood. So we'll get some ply and mark it out. Okay, time to get this scuttle hoop sorted. I had a look round and couldn't find any decent Chinese plywood that I'd got that came from Birmingham, but I've found some very nice material that came the other day into the shed, and I've purloined a piece. What I'm going to do is just mark these two rails here so I can cut upwards, cut two slots, and then this will drop down just below the level of that. And I think if I can get it to below that level, it'll give me a chance to get a fixing through on the no, it won't. I'm just trying to think how I'm going to get on with this. No, I'll just run it down, I think probably to the bottom there, either side. Just want it to be a nice neat fit. Right, let's try that on now. Yeah, should be the job, should do it. So we'll just mark the other side now, and we can cut the exact outline out. And we can just take 2mm off that and cut to that line, and we should end up with something that will act as a template for the dye bond. I've just drilled and put a threaded insert into the bulkhead so that I can locate this scuttle piece on, and so it won't move around now. So that's located that sufficiently well, I think. So it's time to fit the cowl. I'm just fettling it at the moment. I've got a midpoint on it and a midpoint at the top. I think I'm going to just use these little 4BA studs that I'm putting on all the side panels on with, because there are some fixings on the real thing that are around this cowl, but I'm just trying to get this join as tight as I can. I think I've got one place where it's slightly out, but I'm just filing things up to get as close as I can. I don't need to worry too much, because the real thing is a bit of a mess when you look at the pictures of the cowl. But I think if I put one there, one at either side at about 45 degrees, and then fix it twice with onto this bracket that comes backwards, I should have a reasonable sort of a finished job. So I'm just going to drill, and I think at the moment I'm going to try and just tap the plywood and put these 4BA bolts in and see how I get on. If it's not going to work, it's no big deal. I can probably go for an insert at that point. I've got 18mm of timber to play with, or plywood, but I think if I go for the middle of the plywood and just tap it, I think I've got a chance of getting a decent fixing. So I'll just finish this fettling of the edge to get it to fit as well as I can against the scuttle bulkhead, and we'll drill a hole and see how we get on. It's not quite as satisfactory to tap as hardwood, I don't think, but I think we're getting a reasonable finish in there. If all comes wrong, I can end up either, as I say, putting an insert in or gluing it even. Getting quite a decent grip on it by the feel of it now. I think it's just the first part of the tap was a bit slack. I think this will pull down tightly. Yeah, that's good, that's working well. So now I can start and just pull this round now into shape and put the second one in, and then just get this last bit of bend on and mark where I need to cut the sides for where it meets up with the next panel. but now I've got that immediate fixing, I can start and work my way around and push it into shape much better than when it was just flapping around. Yeah, it's definitely given me the sort of pull that I need to get this into shape. And it's pretty good fixing. So I can just go on then, once I've got that done, and mark the positions I've got to cut this bottom line at. And then we're pretty much there then, I think. Yeah, that's gone down very well, I think. Probably a better fit than on the real thing. There's a very slight gap there that's like a thumbnail. That's where I'd over sanded back the scuttle. But rather than mess around, I can always resort to filling when we're getting round to paint. At the moment I'm not going to worry too much about a millimetre here or there. As I say, particularly if you look at the pictures of the proper thing, you'll realise that they're not very well fitted at all. And that's it then, we can just bend that and mark these half positions down the middle and cut this to size. But that's going to be plenty strong enough by the time it gets fixed to here. I'm quite happy that that will be a really solid cowl. There's got to be work. I've got to fit now some studs to the back of this piece here. The reason I wanted the separate piece was that there's a couple of bars will come out here. This will be cut away on the top. The windscreen will go in, and then there's some work to be done to fair up the cowl part to match up to the windscreen surround, which is flat and square. So you've got to blend it in. So that'll be a job for filler and glass fibre, I think, later on. But yeah, that's going quite well. Right, I've cut the sides down to size, so they now sit into the aluminium pieces that come out from the scuttle and hold that. Just tapping the last hole now to fix this scuttle cladding in, and it's pretty much there as far as the straightforward bit is concerned. I've got to move on then and get the cutout done and mount the windscreen itself, but that's the next stage really. Well, this last screw hole here again goes through the aluminium and into the plywood that we screwed on, so that gives it a fixing which seems to be getting me a little bit of purchase. The last ones up there, I've just got a nut on the back. I'll need to cut the actual bolts down a bit, but we can sort that out later. But that has pulled it all together nicely. I've got a decent join all the way around there now. Certainly as good as, if not better than, the original. It's slightly higher there on that part, but I suspect a bit of judicious bending when it's off, and I can get that to sit even better. Tiny bit of damage on the die bond there, but again it won't matter because of this screen business. But really, on the whole, that's gone pretty well. That's given me the scuttle. I'll need to, at some point when we come to fix the steering wheel, probably take a lot of this plywood out in the middle. It's only dead weight effectively. Now it's done its job in holding the actual cladding. Right, so that's got the cladding done for the base of the steering wheel shroud. Still quite a lot of work to do when I get further on with it for getting the windscreen in. But at the moment what that does is give me the starting point to get the cockpit sides done as well, so it's a fairly major step forward again. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll be doing something different on the cart, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye.